Back to My Garden, episode 85.
Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
Hello, gardeners. Are you concerned about toxic chemicals, GMOs, and frankenfood? Don't panic. Grow organic. Discover my new resource for organic gardening. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/myorganic. It's finally here. 99 remarkably clever gardening ideas that you can use immediately. It's a free report. You get instant access. It's an epic list of tips, hacks, and gardening shortcuts just for you. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/clever. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to another episode of Back to My Garden. Fantastic guest for us today, folks. We're going to the East Coast of the United States. Kathy is a talented garden designer, a writer, a coach, and a speaker. She's a fabulous gardening blog. It's at speakingoflandscapes.com. We're going to talk about her blog a lot today. Kathy has worked with beautiful landscapes for 30 years, including meadows, woodland edges, shade planting, and foundation gardens. She loves working with native plants and organic techniques. Kathy's a regular columnist for the day Zippo 6 and a brand new writer and an expert for About.com. We're going to talk a lot about garden writing today. We've got a ton to chat about. Please welcome to the show from Connecticut, Kathy Connolly. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm excited that you're here, and I kind of gave you a brief introduction. I want to hear your stories, and our listeners want to get to know you as well. Kathy, can you take a minute and relax and just tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into gardening?
Well, as so many gardeners, my grandmother was my influence, my dad's mom, and she grew tremendous gardens, but she also grew a gardener, and that was me. So I know that's not an uncommon story. Grandmothers have a lot to do with where we go in life, and she certainly did for me.
Very good. And where part of the country was that in?
She's in the Pittsburgh area. She's no longer alive, but she was in the Pittsburgh area and right in what they call the South Side, if you have a Pittsburgh accent. Had a tremendously steep hillside that she grew on. She terraced it. She was German by birth, and she learned all her gardening in Germany, and she came to the U.S. Around the time she was 22, 23, and went to work. And by the time I came around, the whole hillside was tremendously abundant with everything from fruit. She had chickens. She certainly had all the vegetables you could imagine. And she didn't make me work in the garden, but I just followed her around. And she would tell me stories, and one of the stories was that it was the garden fairies who made the garden grow. So I started out believing there were garden fairies, and I'm not sure to this day that there aren't.
For those of you driving, listening in your car, I'm going to have all of Kathy's links and resources up at the blog at Back to My Garden. And make sure you follow her and check out her blog at speakingoflandscapes.com. Tremendous resource site. Share her content on social media. Kathy, maybe we'll start with your blog because it's such a great site. How long have you been garden blogging?
2 years. It's 2 years this month, actually. I started writing for the day newspapers as a columnist. Green and Growing is the name of the column. And that paper group, they cover from New Haven, Connecticut, up to Norwich, Connecticut, and over to the Rhode Island border. So it's a pretty big group of homes that are accessed by those papers, and it's been very rich, very, very rich and educational for me. And it's wonderful to get people's questions. Always
fantastic.
An education in that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, you garden where there's 4 seasons, right? Like, it's a little different than our friends in Texas and California.
Well, there really are 4 seasons here. I live in what they call the shoreline area, this coastal Connecticut. So we're actually in a tiny little sliver of climate that is similar to, let's say, Northern Virginia or Delaware, because we're so coastal. So I have the interesting advantage of having a pretty ideal climate, I'd say 7 to 8 months a year. And then when it's not ideal, with some effort, I continue to do some outdoor growing. And I certainly overwinter a lot of things outdoors, my leeks, for instance. And I've overwintered potatoes and carrots outdoors. And, some of my herbs stay really very, very nice all winter long. So it's an interesting little zone. Some people are surprised by how much we can do right here year-round.
So you don't have snow on the ground all winter. It comes and goes?
That is correct. Yeah, depends on the winter.
I'm jealous. I can see my garden, and it's just a 2-foot deep white blanket with stuff poking through.
But I bet you already know this, that 2-foot deep white blanket is actually not all bad. It's if it stays and it's stable, it is basically like a blanket for your garden, and when it melts in the spring, it will deliver some nitrogen to the soil. So it's not all bad either. I was just writing this week an article about winter lawn care, which may sound like an oxymoron, but the reality is that right now I'm looking at a bare lawn, and yet the temperature is only 20 degrees. And it's actually worse for the lawn than if it had a nice little blanket of snow on it. So, there's a silver lining in that 2-foot deep.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know you're doing a lot of garden writing, and you're now kind of an in-house expert for about.com.
Yep, I'm trying.
Or aboot.com, depending on what part of the country you live in. What's that like? Because that's a rather large website.
Yeah, I just started this month, and it's been an education. The site was run by another editor for several years, a fellow named Kelly Burke, and I believe he's out of New Jersey. And so he has a lot of good information up there. I'm taking a little different direction from Kelly in that I'm adding a section called Lawn Alternatives, hoping that will be an equal quantity of material within a couple of months. Because what I'm finding in my work as a designer is that people are, lawns are lawns, and it's a well-established form of landscape, and it has certain amount of usefulness depending on, where you are and what stage of life you're in, whether you want children out on the lawn, play space, etc. But I get so many inquiries now about meadows and no-mow lawns or low-mow lawns. And so I think it's time for that site to move into that set of information as well. So that's what I'm working on.
For those of you hearing a scratch noise, that's me taking notes. I put them in the show notes at the blog. I'm understanding the no-mow, low-mow attractiveness. I'm at a stage of life I'd love to put AstroTurf in the whole thing sometimes. Or just more raised beds. But talk to me about meadows.
Yeah.
Are they appropriate for, say, suburban living, or is it more rural?
Well, first of all, you have to ask the question, what is a meadow? And like so many things in horticulture that's beyond the definition of a simple plant, it's really a combination of perennial grasses and perennial flowering plants, by and large. There may be a few annuals in there, but it is an established collection of grasses and flowering perennials, hopefully native, but they don't have to be. And it is a space that becomes self-sustaining. It does not have to be big. It can be. I mean, we have famous examples of very, very large meadows, and certainly the prairies of history, and there's very little difference between a prairie and a meadow. So the reality is that you can have something that is self-sustaining and made up of flowering perennials and grasses in a 10 by 12 space in a backyard in the middle of any city in the U.S. or Canada. So it's entirely appropriate for all sorts of situations, whether it's urban, suburban, country. It really doesn't matter what the size is. It's more about the combination of plants and how you treat them. One of the reasons that they're so valuable today is that as our pollinators are very, very challenged. For the monarch butterfly is certainly a famous case. The honeybees are a famous case, and also many, many, many of our native bees. Honeybees are European in origin, of course, but we have many, many, in New England alone, 400 species of native bees, and many of them are facing the same kinds of challenges that are facing honeybees. So these spaces become very, very valuable in terms of sustaining insect populations. And of course, we want the insect populations because they pollinate plants. And it's not just for decorative purposes, but they pollinate all of our food crops. And again, because I talk to people a lot about this, I have to push it one more point further, which is that it's not just about our food crops, it's also about the food crops that feed the animals that we use for protein. So it's really the whole food supply that's affected when we lose pollinators. And that's why I think there's such a big interest today in meadows. So to go back to your original question, they are entirely appropriate for even a very small lawn area or yard area. They're very appropriate for public parks and any other kind of space you might describe. You could put them in an office park or in among a concrete setting in a city. There's no limit really to where they can be put. They may take more effort initially, especially in one setting versus another, but they're entirely appropriate. And I really encourage people to start growing them, even if it's just a little bitty patch.
Okay, so you're a very talented landscape garden designer, and a client comes to you and say, I want to create a meadow here. Do you have like a bag of tricks or favorite plants that you would go to kind of start?
Well, that is a really good question.
Well, let's pretend it's your zone. I mean, we're not going to do Arizona or anything. We'll do your zone.
Right. Well, the first thing I would tell somebody is that we're going to be working with about 50 or more % grasses, and these are bunching grasses, not lawn grasses. And the balance of them will be the flowering plants. And as far as the individual plants, when I get into the grasses, we talk a lot about warm season and cool season grasses. And there are a variety of examples, but one of my personal favorites among the warm season is little bluestem. Little bluestem will grow all over, I'd say, most of eastern U.S. and Canada, and I'm sure that it's native, I believe, to all of eastern U.S. and Canada, particularly southern Canada. So that is a wonderful warm season grass that sort of comes alive when the soil gets over 55 degrees temperature and puts out a very lovely look in the meadow. True to its name, it has a little bit of a blue appearance, and these days there are what's called cultivars of little bluestem that are very blue, and some of them even have red streaks, like a deep red. So because the plant has become very popular in the nursery trade, there's a lot of breeding work going on with it. So that would be one that I would look to. Another one another group of plants really that we would use around here a lot are the fescues. There are many different types of fescues in the meadow. Certainly the tall fescues, sheep's fescue, are really good ones in a tall meadow, and then some of the fine fescues are good for something that's closer. Some people would call a low meadow or a low grow or a low mow or no-mow lawn. You've probably seen plantings, because I see them around all the time now, it looks like a fine lawn grass, but it has been unmowed, and so it sort of flops over in a low mat. It looks a little bit scruffy, but it's attractive. Those are often fescue grasses. So those are two examples in the grass department. I will tell you that I began using a plant this year that I'm just falling in love with, and that's penstemon, Husker's red penstemon. Now that is native around here. It's also native throughout the Midwest. That is in my garden last year, it was stunning. It lasted about 6 weeks in flower, mostly white, some pink in the flowers. It has a brilliant red leaf that persists late into the fall. And it was an incredible butterfly and bee magnet. So I am going to be doing more with penstemon come this year. That was one of my big discoveries of the past year.
I love it. When I get to interview guests and they drop wisdom like that, you could surf the internet all day and not find, Husker's red penstemon. You're doing client work, you're writing, you're teaching, you're designing, you're coaching. What was your personal garden like last season?
Well, my garden's about 4,500 square feet. So that's about, and it's spread out over a 2-acre lot. I have about a half acre in meadow, my own meadow that I've had for 18 years. And the rest of the garden last year, I dedicated a lot more of it to native flowering plants and grasses, kind of extending my meadow in small patches into my what were at one time vegetable beds. As my kids have grown up and moved out, and we don't need as many vegetables as we once did, so I'm dedicating some of the space to more of a flowering meadow type of a planting. I also had great luck last year with Chester Thornless blackberries. I've grown raspberries for years, but they've had an insect problem for the last couple years, a Drosophila fly, and I had to take out all the bushes. So this year I tried this Chester, well, actually I put it in a couple years ago. This year it was incredibly productive, Chester Thornless blackberry. So I had fun with that. I love it when, you get more than you can use, and it can freeze, and they're good to look at, and what a great find that was. So
Nice.
Those are a couple of things that were going on in my garden this year. I also have been having wonderful luck with German extra hardy garlic. Now, I noticed on your questionnaire that you sent me that you were looking for what plants would I recommend people to grow. And, I know tomatoes are kind of like a gateway drug into the garden. And tomatoes are great. But if I were going to give somebody something easy to grow that seems to, just on its own, be incredibly productive, I would recommend this German extra hardy garlic. I get mine from Fedco, which is a farmers cooperative out of Maine. Johnny's Selected Seeds out of Maine also offers it, and a number of other garlic catalogs or plant catalogs that offer vegetables. You can find it around. It's not terribly uncommon. Over the last couple years, mine have grown as big as small apples. I have never seen such big, incredibly consistent, beautiful garlic. So, and it keeps, it's unlike a tomato. All you do is pull it out of the garden, let it dry, you put it away in a dark, cool space, and you've got it for 9 months. So I couldn't recommend that more highly. Mm. Yeah.
It made me think, because I was at the grocery store recently, Kathy, and there was garlic there from China. Oh. I'm in the eastern side of Canada, and I'm thinking, that is a long trip.
Yeah.
Is there really no closer garlic than bringing it in from China? And we planted our very first garlic in the fall here, so I'm optimistic underneath that snow as we got some garlic growing.
You should be fine. You should be fine.
I had a note to ask you. We had a little meadow at our previous house with a ground cover, a little red flower called a Sweet William. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite ground cover? Can you give any tips for the listeners on ground cover?
Well, the first thing I tell people is don't fight moss. I could go on for an hour about the benefits of moss, but that is one of the most natural ground covers we have. We don't generally even have to pay for it. In fact, it's hard to buy moss. You can. Most of it's mail order. But I'm just a big proponent of moss. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot in the nursery trade, and I'm planning to do some more experimentation myself, is what I'll call, and I believe somebody has this trademarked, so I'll just reference steppables. But while that refers to a certain product line, it's also sort of a generic term for low-growing succulent plants that you can walk on at least minimally. Another one that fits in that category is thyme, Thyme, the herb. Mm-hmm. And I've been having a lot of luck with thyme in very, very sunny locations. I'm finding it to be a really good universal elixir, so to speak. And it has a couple of characteristics that are wonderful. First of all, I'm looking at it right now in my not snow-covered garden. I'm looking out the window. It is sitting there with a dark purple green that's every bit as attractive as you could ask for. It certainly gets a much more vigorous lime green in the high summer, but it's very attractive right now. If I were to walk out and pick it, it's perfectly fine. It's excellent all winter long, in my climate at least, and deer don't eat it. So for people who have deer problems, it's a winner. So I highly recommend thyme. Another one that is been a big surprise to me, I never learned about it until a couple years ago. I was talking to an herb grower. I said to her, what do you have that stays looking pretty good through the winter? And she immediately held out a little pot of winter savory. And I have to say, it's almost like winter savory has its own antifreeze. It stays absolutely attractive all through the winter. It has like a red-green leaf. It is not a low-growing ground cover in the way that thyme is, but it is not that tall either. It spreads out more in a branching fashion, but it only gets about 12 to maybe 15 inches tall. So it's a wonderful filler, and it thrives in the summer, and right now I'm looking at it out the window. It's thriving in the winter. And again, you can walk out, snip it off, and it's perfectly fine for the soup pot. Deer do not eat it. So these are all good things to think about.
Fabulous, fabulous, good stuff. Let's take a minute to thank our sponsors and then come back and play 5 quick questions. What's the hottest trend in gardening? I think the hottest trend is aquaponics. Can you really grow a massive garden powered by fish? Find out more and discover the secrets to building fish-powered gardens at www.BackToMyGarden.com/fish. Attention, garden lovers! Do you want to save time, save money, and have your most amazing garden ever? Receive free tips, strategies, and gardening techniques from passionate gardeners around the world. Join the VIP club for free today at www.BackToMyGarden.com/VIP. Kathy, I glanced at the clock and our time is whipping by.
Yeah.
Now's the time in the show where we play a game called 5 Quick Questions.
Okay.
This is your chance to share your wisdom and experience with brand new rookie novice gardeners. Are you ready to play?
Sure.
Okay, question 1. For the new year, I've changed it up, so be nimble. Question 1. What is the funniest gardening disaster that you've ever made that you're willing to admit to in public?
Oh. Funny. That's a tough one. I don't know about the funny part, but I did once make an incredible mistake years ago when I started tending my own meadow. I listened to somebody in a garden center who told me that if I was trying to grow grasses, I needed nitrogen in the soil. And if I didn't want to put down chemicals, which was part of what I was trying to find out about, then they recommended I put in crown vetch. And so I put just a couple sprigs of crown vetch in my half-acre meadow. Crown vetch became like the eggplant that ate Chicago. Crown vetch went everywhere. And it was literally taking over my entire meadow. Well, I got to a certain point where I said, this is going to ruin the whole development here. And so I started to fight it back, except I found out that it is very, very persistent. And I didn't want to use chemicals. And so I found myself experimenting with so many different removal techniques. And finally, it took 5 years until I got it, I think, I got it all out. But it was 5 years of using vinegar-based products and pelargonic acid products like Scythe. These are organic weed killers. I also did a tremendous amount of hand pulling so that it couldn't go to flower and then develop seeds. And of course, if you do the hand pulling in June, after it's put out its first flush of growth, it's actually a good secret for everybody to know. When you pull weeds in late May and early June, the roots are fairly weak in most plants because they've put out this big flush of early growth and the roots are depleted. So if you pull off the plant at that point, you have a depleted root with no leaf above it to send new nutrients down into the root. So it can weaken the plant significantly and sometimes kill the plant. So I basically found myself doing a tremendous amount of hand weeding. So I hope that answers your question. It didn't feel funny at the time, though, I will tell you that.
5 years, that's longer than a university degree.
That's right.
That's good stuff. Is that pelargonic acid?
Pelargonic acid is one of the ingredients in a product called Scythe, Scythe, which is considered an organic weed killer.
I'll have a link in the show notes to that one. That's a new one for me.
Yeah.
Question 2. If you were only allowed to grow 3 plants for the rest of your gardening career, what 3 plants would you pick?
Oh, my. If I'm staying at my house with my current garden, yeah. Well, Rudbeckia, which is also called black-eyed Susan, I have a variety of those. I have Rudbeckia triloba, Rudbeckia hirta. They volunteer here naturally, and they're excellent for pollinators. So I'd have to grow those. They would make me happy, and they're beautiful. Another, on the shrub front, one that I have been enjoying tremendously is winterberry, which is in the holly family. Ilex verticillata is the botanical name. And I'm looking at it out my window right now. One of the tremendous benefits of winterberry is that it holds its very bright red berries all winter long. And then one day in April, they've become soft enough through the freezing and the thawing and now the warming in the spring. And the birds, last spring, I had almost looked like about 100, 200 cedar waxwings fly in one day and literally take every berry. It was the most amazing sight. And what it is that the winterberry fits a little niche in the local ecology, and it's just a wonderful thing because they're beautiful all winter, they're beautiful all summer, and then one day these gorgeous birds come and take the berries because they need them at that time in the year when there's no other food really available. So I would have to grow winterberries.
Nice.
Yeah, so Rudbeckia, winterberry, and then, oh my, I do love my common ninebark, which is a shrub that's native here in the region. It's the Physocarpus opulifolia is the botanical name, and it is not too much to look at in the winter. It's not bad, but it has the most incredible dark purple-red leaves, and it has the most beautiful pink flowers in May and June. And it just stays so abundant right up until deep frost makes the leaves drop off. So I'd hang on to that one, too.
Outstanding. Good. I can tell the list. If you're listening in your car, don't try to write down the Latin names. I'll have all the links up on the show notes, pecking away on your smartphone while you're driving. Question 3. Now, listeners, I want you to make sure you follow Kathy's website at speakingoflandscapes.com. Kathy, for someone who's getting into gardening on the internet, can you recommend a website or two or a blog that you like or a good resource?
Yes. I will give you my 2 top resources. The Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center has a tremendous database for people of all different kinds of gardening interests. The URL is wildflower.org, and they have a plant finder within wildflower.org. You can access it right there from the home screen. It is, in my opinion, about the best plant finder, plant information database that I've ever found from a general point of view for the general gardener. Very complete, excellent resource on native plants for all over U.S., Canada, Mexico, and it also uniquely provides fabulous description of which of our native birds and pollinators, other insects, and critters are supported by these plants. So it really is this full-service website. I can't recommend it highly enough. And then the second one that I use regionally is one called gobotany.newenglandwild.org, and that is the Go Botany database of the New England Wildflower Society. Because I, in my designs, try to incorporate at least 80% native plants, I use it constantly to verify native plant status in our region. And it's incredibly detailed, has wonderful botanical information. I won't call it a beginner's resource in one sense that it does not give you all the growing information. For that, I skip over to the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower.org. But Go Botany for identification is unsurpassed, in my opinion. So those are 2. There are so many others. I teach a 2-hour class on computer resources, internet resources for gardeners and designers. So you can imagine that there's a lot to say on that subject. It's a great question.
Again, let me direct our listeners. Make sure you go to Kathy's site at speakingoflandscapes.com because, 30 years of experience, she can direct you to some incredible resources. There's never a reason to be bored in the garden, is there?
No, there is not.
I'm going to put in a meadow this year. There's always something to do.
Yes, there is.
Question 4. Favorite gardening book? Do you have a favorite that you can recommend?
Well, that question, I saw that on the outline, and that is just like, asking me which poison do you want to take? I collect a lot of books, and I have for years, and I've used them and used them and used them. This past year, there are 3 that I've recommended to people over and over again, so I'm just going to name those. One is Bringing Nature Home by Douglas Tallamy. It is really all about the problem of pollinators and plants, and he offers a wonderful homeowner's insight into how to use your yard and garden to support our native ecology and improve the quality of environmental life. So I really recommend that one. Urban and Suburban Meadows is another book by Catherine Zimmerman. And you may be interested to know that Catherine Zimmerman is coming out with an 1.5-hour long feature film on Douglas Tallamy and his work. So the 2 of them know each other and they're working together. Her book, Urban and Suburban Meadows, is a wonderful, very practical introduction to how to grow a meadow, and not just why, but how. And then finally, the Xerxes Society offers a book called Attracting Native Pollinators, and I would call that the go-to book on that topic. So those are 3 that I highly recommend.
Oh, boy. I've been writing so much today, and it looks like just a giant blue patch of ink. It's good. I have lots of little notes and asterisks. Question 5. Yes. Is there anything that you've never grown that you would love to experiment with next season?
Boy, now that's a good question. I would like to do more with moss. It's not that I've never grown it. I have a couple of areas that have beautiful, smooth, mossy growths. I'd like to do more with it. I'd like to do a lot more with ground covers in general, excepting Pachysandra. I think Pachysandra is well understood out there in the world, and I don't really have any need to do anything with that. But I do think that world of ground covers is an important one for a lot of reasons, and I would love to do more with moss, different types of moss for different applications, and it's such a sustainable plant. And I could go on and on about the benefits that it provides in a landscape. So I think that would be one.
Fantastic. Well, dear listeners, we're coming to the end of another great podcast. Make sure you follow Kathy at www.speakingoflandscapes.com and check out her column at about.com and share it on social media. If you're in the Connecticut area and you're interested in learning more about being a client of Kathy's, definitely reach out to her. Kathy, you've been a brilliant guest.
Oh, thank you.
I want to give you the last
word.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I want to give you the last word to the listeners today. Can you leave us with either a pearl of wisdom or a note of encouragement on our gardening adventures?
Well, it's hard because I could probably go on for hours, but excuse me. I would love to share a little poem with you.
Great.
I think I mentioned that I love to write, and I love to write about gardens because it's a way of helping others come into it. So I wrote a poem called The Gardener's Pen. When a writer grows a garden, she digs first inside her soul. Sunlight is her mentor, seeds her chosen words. Soil is the concept, rain a catalyst. Each rose she plants is a sentence, each border stone a break. Plant markers placed for commas, a shovel propped at margin's edge. Finished with her first draft, her characters grow free to express their lives' intentions in season, space, and time. Then the garden grows the writer. Roots curve gently round her heart. The rich dirt of truth and beauty covers restless hands. So I just I share that because I just want people to know that this comes from a very deep place within me, and I love to share it, and I hope that others find that same deep place in their own gardens. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for being a wonderful guest, Kathy.